All right, welcome again to another episode of Sneaks, Rhymes, and Life. I am your host, Lionel McDonald. So we heard it on the last episode. There was a little bit of a debate at the end there when we started talking about albums, and both of ours, Nick Keeling is joining again as a guest. We were really thinking about what is the better tribe album? Is it Low End Theory or is it Midnight Marauders? So again, Nicholas Keeling, my good friend, my best friend, has joined us again on the podcast. So Nick, you're the first one, so welcome back. Hopefully everything is good. I'm grateful that you're able to join us, but we did not
It's like
see
that.
eye
It's like
to
that thing
eye.
they do on Saturday Night Live when someone's been on five, six, seven times. I'm in the two club now.
Yeah. So you're the only one in the two club. So we did not agree on the better tribe album. We would say easily tribe is top three, top two groups. Like, I think of both of these albums, it's in my top five. I think of
Yeah.
both of these albums plus, you know, Only Built for Cuban Links, The Infamous, and then I think of Illmatic. Like that's my five. But I think we were kind of wrestling a little bit on which is the better album. So let's have a debate on how we think these two albums align. Um, and between Midnight Marauders and Low End Theory, which is the better album? So you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Well, first off, I'll just put it out there. I'm definitely on the side of Midnight Marauders being the better album. It's a tough one. They're both, we always go back to the source and the 5 mic rating scale. They're both 5 mic albums, but if one of them is going to get an asterisk or a little plus by it, or however way you want to, differentiate between the two, I'm on the Midnight Marauders side. So you got the shirt. You can rock Low End Theory, obviously, on this one. So
Yep.
you go first. You got the first. You got this album was released first, so you take first stab.
Okay, perfect. So I think when we think about this album, we can't ignore its predecessors. So People's Instinctive Travels on Paths of Rhythm, that was the first album. That was a 5 mic album. It was totally different than anything else that came out. But now I think when we now enter the realm of Low End Theory, this album is such a different feeling. It's call it a fusion of so many styles or genres of music. So, whether we're talking jazz or, drum beats or bass or, bebop to almost a certain extent, it's totally different feel than we had anything in the hip hop industry. Yes, it is a 5 mic album. I think one of the other unique things, it brought so many different elements um, to the forefront. I think we saw definitely an elevation of the production of, call it the perfectionist that we call Q-Tip. I thought we saw a higher level of, call it camaraderie, or be able to quote unquote do the EPMD of going back and forth like we see on Check the Rhyme. And then, but I really think one of the biggest highlights of the whole album is the coming out party of Fife Dog as a lyricism. I think he was nice to have. He was kind of on the first album. It was like, he's cool. He's kind of like the sidekick. But when you talk about bugging out or you talk about butter and Fife goes in, Fife went in heavy on the lyrics. And when did this guy all of a sudden be able to step his game up like he did? So this is why I think, in a unique spin and a very, I guess, close measurement between the two albums, I give the thumbs up to Low End Theory.
So I'll jump in on a couple of points there because one of them I think is something I'll layer on top of why I think Midnight Marauders is actually better. So definitely cannot take away from like the moment that hip hop was in when Low End Theory came out and how this completely changed the formula for what a group can do in hip hop. They were completely outside the lines. Like you just the first track. I don't know. There's many great the first sound you hear on an album. Sometimes you remember it, like Illmatic. You hear the train tracks. You'll never forget that. Ready to Die. You hear like the 70s music in the back and the baby crying. You don't forget that. And I think in Low End Theory, when Excursion starts, it's like, whoa, what is, and it wasn't like a sample from like something in the world. It was a song, it was a beat, it was a track. And it's like it's so intense. So I give it that. Like what they did with that album was so creative at the time. It was just a complete, like, your ears just like went, whoa, this is intense. You know what I mean? Back in the day when I was a teenager, the whole thing is just like right there. The fight. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on like the fusion. I'm with you on where they were with People's Instinctives and how I think they let the shackles off. I think they didn't have to fit into this like native tongues. We wear dashikis and we're doing this whole thing with like influenced by Bambaataa and with Jungle Brothers and with De La. Like they were allowed to kind of go, that's our crew, but we've got our own sound, and look at how influenced it is by so many different things. So I'm with you on all those pieces. The one I really want to talk about is the fight piece. And I'm with you in that, you know, boom, my check 1, 2, what is this? Like that just blew everybody away when he did that. Cause I was like, that was his first time ever really hitting a track. He didn't do anything on People's Instinctive Path. He was just like, you thought he was like someone's cousin who just got brought along for the day. You know what I mean? Like there was no one to take care of him. He was like 5'2". So he really jumped on the scene there. But where I think Midnight is better, I think you have like a fully formed, confident, like I know who I am now as an MC, and I'm gonna make like every bar count. He's got some hitters on Low and he introduced himself, but he's like, Fife is at his most perfect on Midnight. And you can listen to all these verses, the amount of quotables he has from that album and shit from one track alone is crazy. And just like re-listening to it, I think that's where Midnight gets an edge in the Fife category, in that Fife was coming along and like stepped on the scene for Low End, but he was like a fully formed rap machine for Midnight. And you can tell, like, the first 3 tracks he dominates on Midnight Marauders. Dominates them. Stir It Up, Steve Biko, he goes hammer time on that. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think
Mike gives himself 7 different names on the Midnight Marauders track, on the whole album. 7 different names that he continued to use years down the path. It was great. It was great. Like that's with a plan, you know. So that's my first counter argument to your Fife argument.
Okay, so I like the counter argument. I like the thought of, you know, call it Fife's growth, you know, almost to a level of perfection on Midnight Marauders. But I think when you talk about the evolution from one album to another, I think the seeing how much he grew from album 1 to album 2, and he was borderline non-existent. And you know, I think there were a lot of things that, you know, you talk about the native tongue thing, and there was a lot of strife and arguments about this is what we want native tongues to represent. And you know, particularly, you know, Fife and Tip were, you know, much more like B-boys, like, you know, your 90s hip hop cat, and they were not, they were cool with these guys, but they wanted to do hip hop their own way. So I think this is what's so unique about you know, Midnight Marauders being a great album, but the unlock for this group is Low End Theory. And I think that's why I appreciate the album so much. It's one of those albums that actually, if you listen to it front to back, it almost gets better every single time that you listen to it. And I think, you know, when you talk about, you know, I don't know if there was a trust factor in terms of, you know, how Fife felt about rhyming, or how Q-Tip kind of, again, he's kind of this very controlling figure and how he wants things to go a certain day. You talk about the shackles being left off. We had an opportunity now to have Fife really, okay, you want to spit. Let's see what this looks like. But I think one of the, again, we talk about a couple of the posse cuts that are on there. We talk about Showbiz, and that's actually a funny story all in its own. So for those that listen to Drink Champs, we had Talib and Diamond D on it because they're working on their own album recently, and they talk about the whole Tribe thing and how he's produced amazing songs, he produced the score. But to focus in on Tribe, he produced that song Showbiz. So the song originally was supposed to be um you so all the guys from Brand Newbie, including Puba, but Puba goes first, does a verse. It's a dope verse, but there's a lot of, again, those are 5%ers, and he kind of says a lot of derogatory things about, you know, homosexuals and just the whole gay movement that was, far more prominent in now the 90s. We had the whole Magic Johnson thing that kind of came to light when we're talking about AIDS, and AIDS was so prominent in the in call it the in call it media, and particularly in the papers. The group did not feel very comfortable hearing that verse. They told him, go record your verse again. And he goes, what? Are you kidding me? I'm out of here. He left. He left the studio in a blink of an eye.
I didn't
So
know that.
so then you're left with Lord Jamal and Sadat X, and it says, well, the song's supposed to be 5 guys. That's why we arranged it. It's supposed to be X long. Diamond, you rhyme. You want to jump in on this track? And he goes, hell yeah, I want to jump in on
Yes,
this
I do.
track. So that's how this song came to be. And I think they recorded the whole thing. Everyone kind of then went in their order. And then Diamond kind of slides in and records like a really nice verse. So, but I think also you can't talk about posse cuts. And I think that's one of the things that really gives Low End Theory the leg up, is call it we had him on the scene, but the birth of what we now know as Busta Rhymes, and how amazing that's one of the greatest posse cuts and literally the most memorable song of the entire Tribe catalog
And
is
and
on
let me
that
jump.
album.
Let me jump in because scenario is almost unfair because one thing I won't contest is the flow of this album is like a masterpiece. I already talked about Excursions and how it starts, and that's just crazy. But even the way it goes from what to go what to go what to go what straight into scenario, it's like, come on. It was such a climactic ending to the album
Yep.
that it's hard to not just go back and listen to Excursions again just to keep it flowing, you know what I mean? The one thing I'll bring it back to and why I still think that this album is fantastic, but it's not the full powers of Tribe at their best working, is you're right. He took a huge leap from first album to second album. This is still a Q-Tip album though. We know he produces everything. It was always Tribe Called Quest on the liner notes, but Tip does all the beats himself, and they help out, but he was the one doing most of them. Fife's still only on like half the tracks, like Excursions. That's just Tip. Rap Promoter, I'm pretty sure Rap Promoter is just Tip. Vibes and Stuff, Infamous Date Rape. So I think Fife's just not even. He's probably on like 2/3 most of the tracks, but
Yeah.
Tips all over this thing, and that's not a slight against Fife. It's more you go to Midnight, the quality is better, man, because they're all better at it. Because I would also argue that Q-Tips found his beats muscle perfectly by 93, because that's when he starts doing like Nas album, hits up Mobb Deep, Drink Away the Pain. He did all these other production pieces after this album came out. So another piece for me on that one. But there's certain things I can't deny on this. Like, you're right, Check the Rhyme. It's still probably for a lot of people the greatest Tribe track of all time.
Yeah, because it's got that hard jam feel.
You can't underestimate that. You can't underestimate, hey, what's their greatest track? It's Check the Rhyme. And it might not be, if it's not my first it's probably my second favorite track if it's not number one.
Yeah.
But so I know we're supposed to be debating this right now, but there's some things I just can't like deny. Like the flow of this album is phenomenal. The creativity is phenomenal. You know, Scenario is like, it's like a turbo boost in NBA Live. It's just, like, it's too nasty, right?
Oh, totally. But I think I would give you at the same time, I would agree, although I believe the production is incredible on Low End Theory. I think, you know, it's a masterpiece on Midnight Marauders. That's kind of the feeling we all have on
Yeah.
On just like, if you go track for track, you know, I think Midnight Marauders might have better songs. Like you're gonna lose the first two, but I think you start going everything else after that, you could very well end up, if we were doing a versus on the two albums, I think you could end up with Midnight Marauders being the better album track for track. But I think when you talk about the entire flow of the album, I think we can always debate what the lyrics are, because I have an opinion and you have an opinion. But I also then I think the concept of the album is just better on Low End Theory than it is Midnight Marauders. So
I think it does have a better overall flow and like the way it's built and put out there. But to stay on the beats, you know, it's a funny thing with Tribe, and like for whatever reason, whenever I got my Tribe albums, I never opened it up to see like the production credits, because, you know, I don't know what it is and why I thought this, but the way their beats sounded to me, it just sounded like music. I didn't feel like it was a drum beat with a bass sample with a horn sample layered on top. It just didn't sound like that to me. It just kind of like was so seamless. So I wasn't ever really connected to the beats of Tribe Called Quest until later on. But I remember somebody was talking to me and we were talking about Pete Rock, and someone saying, arguing like, people say, you know, hip hop's not music. Well, I'm like, well, listen to a beat rock beat and tell me that doesn't take an immense amount of musicianship and all that. And I'm like, yeah, exactly, because he layers in so much. And then I remember talking about that and then listening to Tribe again. I'm like, these beats are phenomenal. Like they're on another level because they just sound like music. And that's where I'll go with Midnight as well. There's bass lines and like people like bass, and then there's Midnight Marauders. Like if you ever get a chance, listen to instrumentals of this album, or if you've got like a crossfader or some kind of like board you can work with, just listen to the bass lines on this album. They are like, they're phenomenal. So I'm with you. I think the beats on Midnight Marauders are like 2 steps above. They're just like heavy, they're thick, they're introverted. They got like skips in the middle where they go to different cadence, like, whew.
But again, that's the thing. What's unique about how they, I think in both cases of the albums, like they were going for a certain feel, and I think, you know, the times and where they were in their process, you know, they were on Low End Theory, and I think that's what really sticks out to me is they were going for a very jazzy boom bap, or not even kind of boom bap-ish lyrics, but really a jazzy, you know, drum beat like feel. Like it was so different that someone was trying to, you know, create hip hop music out of such a bass line. But you know, you have so many different instruments that they were using at the time to kind of create that music. I think they were going for that, and I think they hit a home run there. So
why do you think, and it's something I just thought about it. Now I want to ask you this question. You know, of all the years of mixtapes and people rhyming over other beats, you don't hear a lot of people rhyming over Tribe beats.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, like, why not? Like, I think I've heard a couple people use like Award Tour, which is okay, I get that, but it's not like people are out here putting these beats on mixtapes, at least that I've heard a lot of. I'm sure they're out there, but you know, there's some beats that everybody freestyles on to get themselves out there. Like, why do you think? Well, I have my own thought on it, but I don't know.
I think when you talk, you kind of said it earlier. I think that some of these beats are so intricate and that they jump and skip, and it's not a beat that truly, grabs you as an individual. But I think where Tribe on both of these albums is so unique is when you put it together as the set, whether it's 1 to 14, we go excursions to scenario and everything in between. There's such a flow to it. It's hard to say that you're just going to jump on a beat and you want to freestyle. Like, you're not going to jump on scenario and freestyle because the song is so loud. The beat almost will drown you out, and that's like their most decorated song. You go to a award tour, that's a song that you can kind of flow to a little bit more. But I think with certain artists, I think there is such a respect for those albums. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to try to, because you get immediate, as soon as you jump on a beat, you kind of get compared. So I think there's almost to it, and not many people say it. Like, it's like, do you hear people freestyle on 36 Chambers? No, you don't want to go into that. It's like, oh, it's either I come out that I was better than Ghost or Ray or Meth on this track, or I just did this track horrible and I should lose my hip hop card. So I think that's why there's certain albums that guys just avoid. Like, guys don't jump on The Chronic. Guys don't jump on don't jump on Ready to Die. Like, you do hear someone freestyle in The Warning? No, it doesn't happen. But I think when you think of other artists they've created an amazing song, and I think it's so unique, like, that is an easier song to flow and guys jump on it. Like, again, when I talked to OC not too long ago, he says that he had such a hard time recording Time's Up because of the beat cadence was just not normal. And he had to figure out how to do it. But that's why you hear nobody else go in on that, because you'd have to figure out how to rhyme on that. And it's just not easy. It's not like, and I'm not gonna, I think the song is absolutely amazing. It's one of the best songs of the 90s. It's 93 to Infinity. But the beat is so easy to flow on. Why you saw J. Cole recently jump on it and obviously blew up the spot. So
yeah, and like Shook Ones, it's pretty just straight up and down.
Yeah,
you can just kind of count on it. You know what I mean? So not that it's not a great beat, but
no, it is a great beat.
There's an intricacy and a way that these tribe beats weave themselves together that, you said it before, to the perfectionist that kind of is Q-Tip, like, you kind of get it. Like, these things are highly reviewed. Not that other beats aren't, but these have come together in such a way that it's back then, people were coming out with albums a couple years, every 2-3 years, and Tribe took a little bit longer usually. Like, they were maybe every 2, maybe like in 2 years calendar wise. Months in between that thing would be a long time, because it's like almost 4 years before Life come out after this one, right?
Yep. So
that was for other reasons, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you were talking about just this whole being able to flip on a beat. So I think if we maybe we kind of go to a scorecard here, and then a closing statement on the album, and let's see if we come to a consensus of where we are. I'm already feeling that we may not agree, so that might be okay. So if we go production, which is the better produced album?
Midnight Marauders.
Okay, I'll agree with you there. Okay. Lyrically, which is the better album?
It's Midnight, because of Fife. And I'm a big Fife fan. Like, this. But
you would be the Fife of this too.
Absolutely. When we perform Check the Rhyme on our nights,
I'm Q-Tip and you're Fife.
You are Q. It's just the way it goes. But I anyone that's listening to this, go back and really listen to Midnight Marauders and just jot down all the one-liners, the punches that Fife has on this thing. There's you'll have like a page full. There's so many, and that was him at the peak of his craft, and the way that he likes to rhyme and the way he likes to battle. Like, every rhyme to him is a battle, and you can tell it on this album, and he kills it.
Yeah.
So lyrics, I'm heavy on Midnight.
Okay. So let's go to the flow of the album, which is the better album. By the way, I'll agree with you on the lyrics of Low End Theory. Or sorry, the lyrics of Midnight Marauders
Midnight.
gets a slight edge. So the flow of this album.
But I'll give album flow. Like, does it tell a story? How does it go? Yeah, I'll give that to Low End. It's tough though, because I think there's a really great flow and story of Midnight Marauders. Like it's like you're on a tour. It's like it's the way it starts with the whole intros and everything.
Yeah.
But you can't, like, if you look at how each album starts and how each album ends, just that alone, Low End Theory is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
All right. So the creativity or / concept of the album, who gets the thumbs up here?
I think from an overall sound creativity, like of the time, yeah, I think Low End Theory was a bigger jump for hip hop at the time of something that you've never heard before. From a concept of the album, I think Midnight Marauders has a better laid out concept. Like it's because they tell you, like, we maraud for years. It starts with a tour guide. It's Steve Biko. That's, it's a ward tour. So it takes you on a path and a bit of a hype and a crescendo, and it kind of goes into the fluffy, wonderful. Then it gets a little dark with, 8 Million Stories and Sucka and Midnight. And then it kind of climaxes again with, Electric Relaxation and like Clap Your Hands. So like the Busta element comes back, or Oh My God, I should say, after that. So, boy, I think if it's creativity, I'm gonna say Low End Theory, but I think from a concept, I think Midnight's pretty close. But I'll give this one to Low End for creativity.
So I agree. So we're pretty close. So if you're going overall album, I think this is where we come back to a stalemate again, because I ain't budging. I'm telling you that when we talk about Low End Theory, it is on a level of being a groundbreaking album. It sounded like nothing like anything else prior to it. It's edgier, it's darker, it's the level of consciousness that is there. And you think of, again, as we talked about, kind of tearing the shackles off, like it's fearless. They go into so many different, like they talk about date rape. Like no one else has talked about date rape on an album, period. They go into how the record industry is screwed people. That's where industry rule number 4080. Record company people are shady. That's where that comes from. They go into a place and they're on jive, like, but they talk about how the record industry is screwing people. And we talk about, people with their masters and they don't have them, and they don't get credit, they get no royalties. So they go into some areas that no other group really has gone into before. And I give the thumbs up in a borderline photo finish to Low End Theory.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong point, especially when you said dark. I'm like, yeah, this album's dark. And that's also why I love it. Like, that's what it is about. And I always go back to that first opening bit on Excursions. Like, it's dark.
The t-shirt, I got the t-shirt hanging up in the back. So with like that,
it takes you on a ride
4 bars
you haven't seen before. And not that Midnight Marauders was going after any kind of commercial flair, but it was definitely a more bright album. It was brighter. There was more joking in the rhymes, and even in the beats. The beats had a little bit more playful feel, although driven by deep bass sounds that worked. But the reason I'm gonna say Marauders is the better album is, to me, this is when everybody in the group reached their peak. To me, this is each of them at their height. It's the best beats, it's the best lyrics, both individually and together. They took Check the Rhyme and turned that into a ward tour, Electric Relaxation, Oh My God, where there's just that same level of wordplay, just on a different space. But I also think on this album, this is where you started to see the two MCs go off creatively on their own, but still kept it tribe the whole time. Like 8 Million Stories, you can Fife is now a storyteller. He's not just a battle rapper. You can
Yep.
listen to that song and you can picture him in his Queens apartment doing all those things. Like, I've always had a vision for this to have a video, and I feel like Martin Lawrence should play Fife in the video. Like, could you imagine Martin Lawrence
Yep.
running around, burning his suit, catching this, down at the bodega, going to the Knicks game? Like, yeah, I could totally see it. But that was Fife letting you into his world, versus the next song, that was Q-Tip kind of going more from the maybe essence of Low End, but going on to the next topic he wanted to talk about on track 5, which is Sucker. It's so unique how they both approach it, but then they come together on a song like Electric Relaxation. You're like, man, these guys are meant to be, because they're better together than they are separately.
Individuals.
So I just think it's a better album, because all the individuals have reached their peak for that 93 album. So yeah, tough debate for sure.
Yeah, but I think
feel bad for me.
This is, well, no, don't feel bad for me, because I won.
You shouldn't feel bad, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I won. Like, don't feel bad for me. It's like, it's okay. You're gonna have to
No,
log off this podcast and realize you took an L because you didn't take the right album. So it is what it is. I think we'll call this a stalemate, just for politically correct. We can go and listen to this afterwards, and we can have our friends. So please share. We can have our friends debate of what we've debated. I have even friends like Dan and my brother-in-law Chris. They actually have, like, it's almost like an after show. They have a chat group that talks about this show. So Chris and Dan, love you guys. I love how you guys like to hear my podcast, and you listen to a lot of different things and debate some of the things, because I know they don't agree with everything, which I think is totally awesome. This is not to, hey, this is a Lionel listening party and everyone should be singing Kumbaya about everything. So Nick, again, really appreciate you being on. You lost, but that's okay. But we're gonna have to do this again, because I think this was a lot of fun, and I think we're both so passionate, and we've done it at a variety of different times, concerts among other places, where Check the Rhyme has come on, and we kind of fall into formation, and we know who does what part, and so forth. So pretty awesome to do this. There's lots of other albums, so we're gonna have to start thinking about some other topics to debate. I know that the other one that kind of came up is not a hip hop one, but we were kind of talking about Barclays versus Griffey's, or Barclays versus Pennies. So Pennies. I know where you stand. So we could easily have a very interesting debate on that one. But thanks for your time again. Appreciate you being on.
All right, my man.
Sneaks Rounds in Life. This was very dope. Until the next episode. Peace, everyone.
Peace, brother.